Hello, everyone. Welcome to another one of our sessions from Leverett Edu. I'm Dr. Mehna Chawla Singh. I'm a professor with international experience, both in India and in the US, most recently teaching at American University and at Georgetown. So I bring to you in these webinars a professor's perspective. You have excellent counselors who help you through your counseling services, your application process. But I bring to you the perspective of a professor because I have been on the other side and I have looked at many, many applications that would come from India and other parts of the world. So today I thought I would introduce to you something which is not dealt with very often in many of these webinars on study abroad, which is PhD. So if you're a student who's aspiring or thinking about a PhD in the future, this is a session for you. I have some tips for you here, not so much about choosing programs, but actually just thinking about that PhD and what you need to have and think about in terms of the skill set. So the first thing is, you might think it's easier to apply for a PhD than a master's because the truth is there are fewer decisions to be made. You already have a broad subject area that you have decided and you're looking for your professors. But you know what? That's not true. Even as you look for fellowships, which are all over the place, the information is available. You will be checking about living conditions for a PhD program because you may not be in the dorms. But I want to say that actually the PhD, because it is a long haul commitment, I know that from personal experience, it can be a very challenging and daunting beginning. It doesn't have to be that all through, but very often it is daunting because the expectation from those applications is much higher. The standard is much higher. The expectation to show your scholarship is much higher. I know this from personal experience from my own journey of having done a PhD and then subsequently published it as a book in the US and then a second book, which was a postdoc. So I want to say that many of the things I say here are culled and collected from that experience of having been down that road. So today, as I said, I'm not really talking about how you will find programs and scholarships. I'm offering a perspective of an educator, which is based on my own journey and my journey from the point of doing a PhD to the point of being a published author and now a peer reviewer and also on the editorial board of a journal. So there are certain things you need for this long haul commitment. I'm going to speak about three things. First, I'm going to speak about basic soft skills and mindset. Secondly, I'm going to speak a little bit about content requirements for the application process. And thirdly, I'm going to speak about how, which is how will you make your application creative and compelling by widening the scope, by adding an element of novelty to your application so that when the admission committee looks at your application, they say, oh, wow, this is an interesting perspective. So there are some tricks that you can keep in mind so that your application becomes interesting. So let's just first get a few basic facts out of the way. We know that a PhD takes 3 to 4 years in Europe. And typically it takes 5 years in the US because the US also in many universities has coursework requirements, which means that 18 months to 2 years is going to be spent in a certain number of courses that you need to take. Those courses can be very closely related to the PhD dissertation that you're planning to do. At the end of it, you will write your dissertation, which will take you a year or a little bit longer. And then you will defend it in front of a committee. The interesting thing is that you can actually choose the people who will be examiners or committee members for their PhD defense. And at least in the US, it is a public event. So you can have friends and family and other people who will come when you make your presentation and your defense of the PhD. So first, let me look at the mindset, because this is going to be a commitment of a few years. Your mindset must include an acceptance that this is an advanced program, which is going to need time, it's going to need energy, and it's going to need commitment. You will be looking micro deep into sources, and you will look into hundreds of sources. Sometimes you will be looking at sources and spend a lot of time. You find them very interesting, and you realize that they're actually not so closely related to what you're doing. And then you say, oh my God, I wasted a week. Well, that's part of the journey. That's part of gathering knowledge and sifting and choosing that knowledge which is relevant to what you're doing specifically. So in terms of your mindset, you have to love the work you're doing. If you don't love the subject and love the project, it's not going to be easy to carry on for 3 to 5 years working on just that one subject. So among the soft skills, the skill set that you need, one is endurance. You have to be able to endure in a nice way, which is actually have the patience to continue with the hard work, to be able to persist. So please remember that it's going to need persistence. You're going to have to buckle down and say, I'm stuck with this in a very nice way. This is part of my journey. So there will be highs and there will be lows, and you must go with that and think of what you're going to be at the end of it, which is be a scholar with a particular kind of expertise. And that is something no one can take away from you ever. You're going to have a title before your name that is forever. So that PhD and the highs and lows are something that you should embrace and not easily give into in terms of getting fed up. There's no space for that. Secondly, let me speak a little bit about requirements for a PhD study abroad. We know that the application process can have a very challenging set of standards. You might be asked to write an SOP, but that SOP has to be much more impressive. Your inputs need to be of a high level. You need to show clarity of subject and a sharp focus on what you're doing, what it is, why is it important, how are you the best person to do it, and what will you bring to that. So those are actually different sections that will form your SOP. I will be doing many other sessions on the PhD on how to map your proposal, and this is just a little bit of a trailer with some tips for you. So your subject has to be compelling. You might say, how can I find a novel topic? You know what? Even if your topic is not novel, your perspective has to be novel. So a subject which is been looked at or investigated by other people. For example, you might be looking at immunology. There is so much work on immunology, but you might actually be able to bring a perspective from India, from your experience. Maybe in the last 2 years, you have worked in a COVID lab. Maybe you have been reading about things that have triggered your inquisitiveness to learn more. Maybe your project is about that. Similarly, it could be a project about markets. How are Indian markets different from other markets? How is consumer behavior different? So all I'm saying is, do not think it's futile to look for novelty. The novelty is based not just on the subject, it's also based a lot on the perspective that you bring to it. Your own subject position, meaning who you are, is very important. What has your experience been? Are you from a particular part of India which has certain novel exposure? Are you from an age group where you can look at cybersecurity in a different way? So I'm just giving you examples to say that your own subject position should be able to put out arguments which are persuasive, to say why you are the best person to investigate this. Why is this PhD project particularly suited to your experience, your previous job experience, your lab work, your exposure as a consultant, anything you want to say, depends on your subject. It is good to look for a professor who is doing your kind of work in that university. I definitely support that. But I have a tip for you here. Don't just follow a professor. It's great for any professor to feel that, yes, I am being admired and followed. But I do also want to say that when you follow a professor, it's also exciting for them to know that you are bringing something different to that experience. They also want to know that you might bring a perspective from a particular job that you have done, from a particular experience that you've had in the last 2 years, from a particular part of the world. So you might be working with a professor in Canada, a professor in Israel, a professor in the US, in EU. But maybe when you go from here, from India, from South Asia, you are able to bring a perspective which is comparative to what they are doing. So show them in your SOP or your proposal that you have a certain perspective, which you feel will also enrich the work of the team that is doing scientific or other market research or whatever research in the university or program where you would like to go. So for example, I gave you the examples of epidemiology from South Asia, data analytics. Data analytics from our part of the world will have very, very different inputs. What are we dealing with? How has data science progressed during the pandemic when everybody has gone online? Is there something specific about a generation from India, which is able to do data analytics in a particular way because of their approach? Similarly, are you working on economics? Is the Indian model particularly fascinating? You might look at social sciences, humanities, biological, medical sciences, any of those subjects. So the point I'm making is that the subject you're working on is not going to limit the novelty that you can bring to it. You can actually bring novel perspectives to anything that you're doing. The second really important thing I want to emphasize here about the project is that your project must have a strong element of multidisciplinarity. This is not the age of single disciplines. You need to widen the scope. For example, if you're looking at data science and you're looking at machine learning, you cannot separate it from psychology and neuroscience and behavioral science. We know that. Similarly, if you're looking at economics, you know that development is connected to it. Sociology is connected to it. Community development is connected to it. Migration is also connected to economics. So whenever you look at a project and you look at a problem which your PhD is trying to solve or even explain, the important thing is to go beyond the disciplinary boundaries. For example, let me give you more examples. Suppose you're doing biomedical science. Well, what about ethics and philosophy? How should experimentation be done on various subjects, on animals, on human beings, and so on? There is an important element of that. What about psychology? If you're doing psychology, look at community development, look at economics, look at employment, look at identity. If you're looking at health and health policy, you need to look at behavioral science. Why do people refuse to get vaccinated? That's become a big issue. How is science and belief systems, how are science and belief systems going to influence the outcomes of levels of vaccination? So that's just another example. If you're doing literature, how is it connected to history? No work of art is produced in a vacuum. It must have connections which are historical and within a society. So you have history, sociology, literature, and art. Those are very, very easy connections. And you know what? You can even add gender studies there. If you're looking at regional studies, you're looking at something from South Asia, remember, you can add international relations. You can add the study of diplomacy to that. If you're looking at public policy, think of urban planning, think of poverty studies, think of development. So these are all the many, many different ways in which you can think of multidisciplinarity. The reason I keep emphasizing this is because very often when we are doing degrees in India, we are doing very specialized degrees. When you're doing a PhD, you're doing both. You're doing a deep dive and you're doing broad scope. Your PhD will be a deep dive into a particular subject, into the depth and the minuteness of the subject. But at the same time, your PhD should have relevance. How is it going to be relevant to other aspects of knowledge? Why should anybody care and even fund that research? Why should people give you a fellowship afterwards? Because as a researcher, you need to establish that you have the intellectual credentials to begin that PhD, that you have the persistence to be able to carry on in a committed way and really deep dive into the subject. That you can not only be a specialist in your area, but you're also a thinking human being, a scholar who thinks of broader implications of the subject that you are studying. That is how you create a buy-in. You create a persuasiveness about what you're doing. That is how you create something which is compelling, by showing that you are creative about the subject that you are investigating. So I do want to say now that in many ways, these are the sort of really important aspects that you need to look at. There will be times through the PhD, as I said, that you will hit upon sources and questions which are very, very exciting. You might come across a time when your supervisor or another professor that you are speaking to gives you a chance to be able to write a paper or co-author a paper. That's the chance that you must jump at. If you can get a publication in a good peer-reviewed journal while you're doing that PhD, that is fantastic. That is the aim you need to have. If possible, at least 2. By the time you finish the PhD, your aim should be that the PhD thesis is worth publishing as a book. I do want to say that publishing a book out of a PhD thesis is another story altogether. I will do a session on that as well for Leverage Edu. I just wanted you to know that we will be hosting several such sessions because we feel that PhD aspirants do not have enough resources available for them. Very often, counseling services do not support your work so much because PhD students are fewer in number. We want you to know that at Leverage Edu, we consider your work to be really important, and we feel that this is something that we would like to support you about. I also want to say that sometimes people will say to you that, what is the employability? The employability is not just limited to being a researcher for all your life. Of course, if you are a scholar, you will love research for itself. But we all need employability. I want to say today that policy making and policy studies, social sciences, all of those have tremendous scope also. Global scientists are employed in all kinds of international organizations, in United Nations organizations. They're employed by governments, even governments. They have civil servants and administrators, but they always have people who are scholars with PhDs. So the PhD route to employability is a different one. It's not a bad one. It's a different one, and it's a different space. And if you are committed to doing that research and contributing deeper into knowledge, it's not like you will not have prospects. You will have excellent prospects if your research is conducted in an excellent way. We will be coming back to you with many other sessions. I want you to know that Leverage Edu is a full stack university admission service. We look at students from all disciplines, whether they're undergrads, whether they're going for masters, or whether they're going for PhDs. I'm senior program advisor at Leverage Edu. I have experience in mentoring, and I look forward to your signing up or your availing of our 30-minute free counseling session, which you can avail of. You can also find Leverage Edu on all the social media handles. So watch out on YouTube. I'm available on LinkedIn as well, and I look forward to answering many of your questions. Finally, I want to say that there will be times that you will fear, but I have it, for me, FEAR is an acronym for face everything and always rise. FEAR. So if you're a PhD aspirant, go for it. I personally love research and have always loved research. I'm a mentor, but I'm also a researcher all my life. So I look forward to hearing from you and thank you for tuning in. Bye bye.